Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Stephen Ratzlaff Jr. of DeForest is an independent candidate in the 37th Assembly District. Stephen, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Well, my question for independent candidates is a pretty basic one. Why are you not an R or a D, sir?
Basically, the reason I'm not an R or a D is because I don't think anything's getting done. Too much gridlock, so I just thought I'd try to see what I could do myself as just as a one person going it alone, I guess.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
On your campaign website, you said you're running because of gerrymandering. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm running. Basically, long story short, I don't believe that Tony Evers or Scott Fitzgerald or Robin Voss should be drawing their own districts. I think it's silly. It's the most silly thing I've ever seen in my life. So,
do you like the Governor's People's Maps Commission proposal, or do you have another plan?
Iowa,
okay.
I think the Iowa map. I think they need to take it out of the hands of Democrats and Republicans. Basically, long story short, Mr. Walters, I don't think politicians should be drawing their own maps. And it needs to be taken out of the hands of politicians, pure and simple.
Okay, appreciate that. Let's talk about, we're in the middle, tragically, of a pandemic. The governor's statewide mask edict expires September 28th. What's your position? Should that be extended from a public safety standpoint or no?
No, I do not believe it should be extended. I think that the county should handle it on a local basis. And if there's basically what they call a cluster or a hotspot, then the local health official should go in there and basically deal with it on a county by county or a municipality by municipality basis. I don't think you need one wide mandate for the entire state. So no, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, if the pandemic really hurt state government tax collections in the current fiscal year, which ends June 30, if we're $1 billion short, how would you react? Do we raise taxes or do we cut spending?
I think you have to do a combination of both. I think you're going to have to look at basically a two-sided solution. I don't think you can do one or the other. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
But I don't think you can do one or the other independent. I think you're going to have to look at both sides of the ledger sheet.
Okay. Senate, go ahead. Any
so I mean, I think it's a two-sided solution. I don't think you could do. I mean, I think you might have to look at both. I know we have a pretty good rainy day fund.
$761 million.
Yeah, it was Governor McCallum that signed that into law or something like that, where they had to sock so much away. So we're in a much better position now than we were back in 2008, I think.
Yeah, it's rainy day fund latest estimate $761 million. So it's a pretty decent down payment on any revenue shortfall. New pandemic subject. Senator Chris Kapping last week introduced a bill. If you're a business or an organization, you followed COVID-19 protocols to protect patients, employers, customers, you'd be exempt from a COVID lawsuit. Do we need that law?
I don't know if we need that. I mean, I think the keyword was frivolous lawsuits, right? Was what they were trying to get away from. So I don't know if we necessarily need that law. I'm not in favor of any kind of frivolous lawsuit because I think just in general, there's too much litigation. But having said that, I mean, it's hard to say because this whole pandemic is constantly unfolding. Yeah. So it's hard to know where the future is going to take us. If you look back to March, I mean, everything looks so different now than it did then.
Right.
I guess we're in a constant state of flux, sir, is how I put it. So.
Yeah, nobody knows what the new normal is or when we're going to achieve any new normal. Hospitals have been on the front lines of treating COVID-19 patients. If you're in the legislature voting on the next state budget, should they get even greater financial priority than maybe they're getting in the current budget?
I would say so, as long as they're using the resources wisely. I know that's where, like you said, they're on the front line because they're having to deal with a lot of this stuff, especially as far as the testing and things of that nature. But yeah, I would say that was something that they could take a look at.
The debate over policing reforms. The governor's got 9 bills. A Republican Senator Van Wangard, a retired police officer, has got a few bills. The Speaker's creating a task force. What, if any, policing reforms do you think need to be enacted?
The big thing that I believe that the Democrats have put forward that I'm in lockstep with them on is the no-knock warrants. Okay. I'm not a fan of them. I mean, especially the one down in Louisville with I think it was Breonna Taylor.
Yes,
that went wrong. I'm not a fan of the no-knock warrants. Absolutely. The chokehold thing, I know that's another thing too. I think that if you have the police officers and they're well trained, then they should be able to have those tools at their disposal. But the key word is well trained, and maybe the 6 months that at the police academy is, or things of that nature, maybe that's just not enough right now. So, because one of the things you hear in the news, Mr. Walters, is they always say, well, this is how they're trained. This is how they're trained. Well, maybe they need to take a look at how they're trained and go from there. Does that make sense?
Well, one of the governor's recommendations is uniform training standards across the state.
Oh,
that's one of his bills. So
sure. Yeah, I'd be on board with that. Yep.
Okay.
I would be on board with that.
As more states around Wisconsin legalize medical and recreational marijuana, what's your position?
Medical marijuana, I am in favor of, yes. Legalizing marijuana, I don't know if we're quite there yet. So part of the concerns that I have is, if they legalize marijuana, I mean, are you going to have the local drug dealer down at the corner by the high school, selling drugs to kids? That's one of the concerns that I have. But as far as from a medical standpoint, I think that doctors should be able to prescribe that as they see fit without any fear of, retribution or things of that nature. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Okay, new subject, property taxes. We're a high property tax state, which is why for more than 20 years, school districts, local governments have had to live with caps and limits on their property tax levies. If you're in the legislature voting on the next state budget, would you continue those caps and limits on property tax levies?
Yep, I would. Yep, I think that property taxes are plenty high, at least I know in my own personal experience. And then if they want to if a school district or whatever, they need more money, then they can go to referendum. Although I am a fan of, I think it's the 2/3. I think there was something that they were attempting to do because Governor Walker was bringing that up, something about funding the schools 2/3 from the state.
Well, we've had at different points 2/3 state support for K-12 schools, but that's fluctuated up and down.
Right. I am a fan of that.
Okay. Local governments, cities, towns, villages, to end the reliance, to reduce the reliance on property taxes, should they have new revenue sources? The city of Milwaukee wants to pass a referendum and levy a 0.5-cent sales tax. Do local governments need new revenue sources?
I think they should actually take a look at the revenue sources that they have and maybe spend them a little bit better. But, I remember when Dane County's sales tax went into effect, the 0.5%, I think that was April 1st, 1991, if my memory serves me correct, because I was about 19 or 20 at the time. So, I guess I'd be open to that. But, I think overall we're just a high tax state. And I think we have to spend our tax dollars wisely before they raise taxes. Now the gas tax, and I'm sure you'll probably get into that in a little bit. That's
where I'm going next.
Yeah.
30.9 cents hasn't been raised. Could you vote to raise it?
I absolutely will. Here's the kicker. Would I vote to raise it? I believe that the gas tax should be indexed to the rate of inflation. So they should tie that back to inflation. Now that was done from 1985, I think, until
2005.
Yeah, 2005, 20 years. And in fact, it was actually a Republican, former Secretary of Transportation. His name escapes me, but he was the one who actually proposed that back in I think it was the early 80s. I think it was Governor Earl and a former Republican Department of Transportation Secretary that actually put that together. And that stopped, and I think Governor Doyle signed that. It was something that the legislature had brought to him during the last budget crunch back around 2008. And why they did that is beyond me, because the cost of construction projects is constantly going up. And that's one of the disagreements I have with the current representation in the assembly seat, because you basically talk to Republicans and Democrats and it falls on deaf ears. You know what I mean? Their answers are, well, the roads aren't that bad. So I said, well, that's fine. If they're not that bad, then fix them. Fix them then. And it just falls on deaf ears. It's basically, pardon the pun, sir, kicking the can down the road.
So go back to indexing, but don't raise the current 30.9 cent tax,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct.
All right. If a school board, a local government, if they plan a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That just seems like it makes sense. They should keep the money here where it belongs. Absolutely. Of course, they should bid it out. But yeah, I would say they would give preference first to local or state-based contractors. Yep, I'd be all for that.
Okay, we've talked about a bunch of issues. Any other issue that's important to your campaign we haven't touched on?
Yes, term limits, sir.
Term limits. Okay.
Term limits, yep. So there's basically three things on my platform: the gerrymandering, the gasoline or transportation infrastructure, and then the third is the term limits. Because if I were lucky enough to be elected as an independent, and I know I'm a long shot because I don't have a D or an R after my name, like you said. The legislature, these people, it reminds me of it's like the cockroach motel. Once you get these people in, they just don't come out. It's the silliest thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean? These people just never leave. So I think there should be citizen legislatures. I think originally when our framers wrote the Constitution, that's what they envisioned, sir, was a citizen legislature, not a bunch of professional politicians. So that's one of the reasons I'm running. And I think that legislators should always be accountable to their constituents. Part of my life as a salesman is I always have to be accountable to my customers. And sometimes customers will tell me when something goes wrong, well, it's not your fault. Well, it doesn't matter. I have to be held accountable to you. I must be answerable to you. And there's not enough of that going around now. So that's just my own personal opinion.
Well, my last question was differences between you and the R's, but I think you just hit it. So if you don't have any other PSs, any further thoughts?
No, other than the fact I appreciate your time to sit down with you today.
Okay.
And I'll be accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime if they have any questions.
Thank you. Stephen Ratzlaff, Jr. of DeForest is an independent candidate in the 37th Assembly District. The election is November 3. Stephen, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Walters. I appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good day. Thank you.
The Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.